Thank you for tuning in to leaddeveloper.com, where we simplify complex property development feasibilities, investment analysis, and everything real estate. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, our Google Sheets-based feasibility suite streamlines the toughest aspects of real estate. Lead Developer Feasibility Suite is trusted by thousands in over 17 countries. Our tools cover everything from quick assessments to detailed cash flow projections and more. Sign up today at leaddeveloper.com for unlimited free access to our expanding library of real estate tools. No credit card needed. Plus, get full support through Edge with step-by-step guidance, exclusive courses, and resources designed for your success. Turn numbers into narratives that win over investors and lenders. Join Lead Developer now.
All right, so today we're going to unlock some real estate mysteries.
Ooh, mysteries.
Yeah, you know those loan closings that everyone kind of dreads?
Yeah.
We're diving deep into that today.
All right, I'm ready.
Whether you're, an aspiring developer or just like really into real estate, this is for you.
Oh, okay.
We're using this great source, Real Estate Loan Closing, explained in 6 simple steps.
Catchy title.
Yeah, and we're going to pull out all the really important stuff.
Nice.
Have you ever wondered what really happens when you close on a property development loan?
Oh, yeah. It's a lot more than just signing papers.
Exactly. So to help us navigate all of this, we've got a real estate transactions expert here with us today.
Hi, everyone. Excited to break this down.
So let's just jump right in. What is a real estate loan closing?
Okay, so it's not just an event. It's really the final step in a whole process, and you got to make sure all the pieces are in place so the money can flow and the project can actually get off the ground.
So it's like the grand finale.
Yeah, exactly.
Where everything comes together.
And especially with development loans, because the lender is essentially investing in like a vision.
Right. It's not built yet.
Right. Something that doesn't even exist yet. So they need to know the borrower can actually deliver.
That makes sense. Okay, so the article breaks it down into 6 steps. Step 1 is all about finding the right attorney.
Super important.
Yeah, I was like, was this really necessary? But they made a good case for it.
Oh, yeah. You absolutely need someone looking out for your interests as the lender. And the article mentioned how sometimes senior officers want to use a specific law firm.
Yeah, that bad.
Well, it can be a red flag. You need someone who's really qualified, not just connected. You know what I mean?
So not just who they know, but what they know.
Exactly. And especially when it comes to construction and development loans, those are complex.
So why is that type of experience so important?
Well, think about it. You need a lawyer who gets construction contracts, zoning regulations, environmental compliance, the whole shebang.
Wow, I didn't realize it was so specialized.
It is. And even something like the law firm's office appearance matters. Yeah, it's an extension of your lending institution. So you want it to project professionalism and attention to detail.
So it's about the image.
Yeah, you want to inspire confidence, right? And also, don't get too hung up on the cost of the attorney.
But isn't cheaper better?
Not always. A cheaper lawyer could actually cost you more in the long run if they mess up or miss something.
I guess that makes sense. You get what you pay for.
Exactly. It's an investment in the success of the project.
Okay, step 1, find the right attorney, check. Step 2, connecting the dots. This is where things get interesting.
Behind the scenes action.
Yeah, they use all this jargon like construction consultant plan and cost review. What is that?
Okay, so basically it's like getting all the intel before you get to the closing table, making sure everything checks out.
Due diligence.
Right, and that specific review, it analyzes the project's feasibility. It's like a blueprint for success.
Okay, so someone's really looking at those plans and costs.
Yeah, they're looking for any red flags or inconsistencies, anything that could derail the project.
So like a second set of eyes.
Exactly, and especially important for development loans because of that higher risk.
Got it. So at this point, the lender's mostly waiting for reports, not really negotiating.
Yeah, more reactive, reviewing things, stepping in if there are issues.
Okay, step 2, making sure the project is solid before moving forward. Now step 3, gathering all the paperwork.
A dreaded paperwork.
Yeah, the article goes on and on about all these documents.
It can be overwhelming.
It is. It is. So instead of drowning our listeners, what's one crucial document for development loans that they should really understand?
Okay, great question. There's this document called the Construction Budget Breakdown, and it often gets overlooked.
Okay, construction budget breakdown. Why is it so important?
Think of it like a financial roadmap for the whole project. It outlines every single cost involved, from materials to permits, and for the lender, it's their assurance that the borrower knows how to use the money.
So it's like transparency.
Exactly. Every dollar accounted for, no surprises.
This one document can make or break the deal.
It builds trust between the lender and the borrower.
Okay, so step 3, gathering the paperwork with a special focus on that construction budget breakdown now. Step 4 is, wait for it, creating your personal cheat sheet.
I know, right? Who doesn't love a cheat sheet?
Yeah. So tell us about this cheat sheet. Why is it so valuable?
Think of it as your condensed guide to the whole closing process. It has all the key terms, red flags, dates, contact info, all on one page.
So it's like a mini command center for the whole deal.
Exactly. It keeps you organized, and you can spot potential issues early on.
Like what?
Let's say you notice a different closing date on your cheat sheet compared to a contractor's invoice. That's a red flag.
Wow, that could save a lot of headaches.
It keeps you on top of everything and helps you make informed decisions.
Okay, step 4, create that cheat sheet check. Now on to step 5, navigating the fine print.
Ah, the legal stuff.
Yeah, the mortgage, the building loan agreement, most people's eyes probably glaze over just hearing those words.
I don't blame them. It's dense and intimidating, but you don't need to be a lawyer to understand the key parts that affect you as the lender.
Okay, that's good to know. So instead of going through each one, can you give us an example of a clause that could really impact a lender, something that maybe even experienced lenders wouldn't expect?
Okay, let's take the mortgage, for example. There's this clause about estoppel certificate.
Estoppel certificates, that sounds intense.
It sounds complicated, but it's basically a truth-telling contract between the lender, the borrower, and any existing tenants.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It forces the tenants to confirm the terms of their leases so the lender doesn't get hit with any surprises.
So like what kind of surprises are we talking about?
Imagine you're lending money for a project, and there's already a tenant, and the borrower says it's a month-to-month lease.
Okay.
But then later you find out they actually have a 5-year lease with super low rent.
Oh no, that would mess things up.
Exactly. That estoppel certificate protects you from that kind of situation.
It's like insurance against hidden agreements.
Exactly. You're making decisions based on accurate info.
Wow, those little details can really make a difference.
They can make or break a deal.
Okay, so step 5, navigate the legal stuff carefully, and those estoppel certificates definitely going on my cheat sheet.
Good idea.
Now, step 6, the final stage, third-party involvement.
This is where it gets real.
So why is this step often underestimated, especially by first-time developers?
Well, it's easy to get caught up in the money and legal aspects, but a development project involves a whole bunch of people: architects, engineers, contractors, surveyors. The list goes on.
It takes a village.
It does, and it's often the communication between all these people that can cause problems.
I can see how that would happen.
Yeah, I once worked on a project where a miscommunication between the architect and contractor about a tiny design change delayed the whole thing for months.
Ouch, that's got to be expensive.
So my advice is be proactive,
Yeah.
communicate clearly, and document everything.
So be organized and stay on top of things.
Exactly. A successful project needs leadership and attention to detail.
Great advice. Step 6, managing those third parties. Definitely not something to overlook. We've covered a lot here, from finding that perfect attorney to navigating all those relationships.
We have. It's been a great discussion.
I feel much more confident about this whole process now.
That's great to hear.
We'll be right back with more insights and some final thoughts, so stay tuned.
And this is just a glimpse into the whole world of closings.
Right.
There's so much more to learn, especially if you're really into real estate.
Yeah, talking to a real pro can make all the difference.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how much goes on behind the scenes that most people don't even think about.
It's true.
Like all those negotiations and documents and details. It's a whole other world.
Yeah, it can be pretty complex.
It is. But I feel like we've at least demystified it a bit.
Hopefully, yeah.
Speaking of details, the article mentioned something I found really interesting.
Okay, what's that?
A lot of lenders don't actually keep physical copies of those big documents like the note or the mortgage.
Really?
That's wild. Yeah, right? You'd think those would be essential.
Super important.
So why wouldn't they keep them?
It's all about efficiency. I guess they rely on summaries and the original presentations.
Huh. So you really got to understand those documents during the closing.
Absolutely. You can't just rely on a summary later if you didn't get the details in the first place.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So let's go back to choosing the right attorney for a second.
Okay.
Now that we've seen all these layers, what advice would you give our listeners about that decision?
Don't rush it. Take your time.
No.
Interview a few different attorneys, ask for references, and really dig into their experience, especially with construction and development loans.
So it's not just about finding a legal expert. It's about finding someone who really gets these transactions.
Yeah, you want someone who can be your guide and anticipate problems, explain things clearly, and help you close the deal smoothly.
So someone you can trust.
Exactly, and don't be afraid to ask questions. There are no dumb questions when it comes to real estate.
The more you know, the better. Right.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about those closing documents for a minute.
All right.
We touched on this earlier, but that list in the article was pretty intense.
It can be overwhelming.
Where should our listeners even start?
Well, think about those documents in categories. Like we talked about proof of income, property details, loan terms.
Right.
But there's one category that often gets missed, and it can cause big problems.
Which one?
Documents from third parties.
Oh, right. You mentioned that before with managing all those different people.
Yeah, and it all comes down to coordination. You've got architects, engineers, surveyors. Everyone needs to provide their paperwork on time, and it needs to be accurate.
So many moving parts.
I know it's a lot to keep track of. And imagine if a survey is missing or an inspection report is late.
Everything gets held up.
Exactly. So the borrower really needs to be on top of things.
So should they be chasing down all those documents themselves?
Well, it's a team effort. The borrower needs to be organized, stay on top of deadlines, and communicate clearly. But a good attorney can also help a lot. They can make sure all the right documents are requested on time, and they can review them to make sure they meet the lender's requirements.
So they're like a quality control expert.
Exactly. And they can also spot any red flags or potential problems.
So having that expert guidance is really valuable.
It is. It can save you a lot of headaches down the road.
So for our listeners who are probably feeling a little overwhelmed, what's your top tip for managing all these documents?
Start early and be organized. Create a checklist. Set deadlines and talk to everyone involved. Don't be afraid to ask for help from your attorney or other professionals.
Great advice. Be proactive and informed.
Yeah.
And speaking of being informed, remember that cheat sheet we talked about?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I love that idea.
It's so helpful, especially for those third-party documents.
How would you use it in that context?
Well, imagine having a one-page summary with all the required documents, key dates, contact info, and any potential issues to watch out for.
That would be amazing. Like a master control panel for the whole process.
Exactly. Everything organized and accessible. No more last-minute scrambling for that one missing document.
I'm definitely stealing that idea. So what are some common mistakes borrowers make with these third-party documents?
The biggest one is not starting early enough. They underestimate how long it takes to get everything together.
Classic procrastination.
Another one is not being organized. They don't have a system for tracking things, so stuff gets lost, deadlines are missed. It's chaos.
That sounds stressful.
It is. And then there's the communication breakdown. Borrowers don't always communicate clearly with the third parties about what they need and when.
So everyone needs to be on the same page.
Exactly. And lastly, some borrowers just don't review the documents carefully enough. They trust that the third party got it right, but mistakes happen.
And that's where having a good attorney comes in.
Exactly. They can catch those errors before it's too late.
So it's really about having a solid team.
It is. You need experts you can rely on to help you through this whole process.
Well said. Okay, so we've talked about the attorney, the documents, those third parties. What about the actual loan itself, the terms and conditions?
Oh, that's super important. You got to understand what you're agreeing to.
I have to admit, when I saw that part in the article about checking all the terms and conditions and rules, my eyes kind of glazed over.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. So where should our listeners even begin?
Break it down. Focus on the key elements.
Okay, like what?
First, the interest rate. That's the cost of borrowing the money, and it can really impact your repayment.
Makes sense. What else?
The repayment terms. How long do you have to repay? What are
Yeah.
the monthly payments? Are there any penalties for paying early?
Right. Those are all important.
And don't forget about fees. Closing costs can add up. Appraisal fees, title insurance. You need to know what those are and how they're calculated.
Oh, no hidden surprises.
Exactly. Read the fine print. Ask questions if you don't understand anything.
So you can actually negotiate those loan terms.
Mhm.
I always thought they were set in stone.
You can, especially in a competitive market, you might get a lower interest rate or better terms if you shop around.
So don't just take the first offer.
Do your research and advocate for yourself. And remember, you can always walk away if you're not comfortable.
All right, good to know. So interest rates, repayment terms, fees, negotiation,
Yeah.
anything else.
Yes, pay attention to the default provisions. What happens if you can't make your payments?
That's not a fun topic.
It's not, but you need to know the consequences, late fees, penalties, even foreclosure.
Foreclosure, that's scary.
It is. So make sure you understand those provisions and that you can actually make those payments.
Protect yourself and your investment.
Exactly. Now, what about contingencies?
Contingencies.
Yeah, those are conditions that have to be met before the loan is finalized.
Like what?
A common one is a satisfactory appraisal. The property has to be worth at least a certain amount.
Right, so it's actually worth what they say it is.
Exactly. Contingencies can also cover things like permits, repairs, title searches.
So it's all about making sure everything is in order.
Exactly, and it's important to understand what those contingencies are and how to meet them.
Okay, I think we've covered just about everything.
We've hit the highlights.
I feel so much more informed now. I used to think closings were this big, scary mystery,
They can be intimidating.
but you've really broken it down.
I'm glad to hear that remember knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And I think our listeners are feeling pretty empowered too.
I hope so.
Okay, we'll be right back to wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts. Okay, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into real estate loan closings.
Time to tie up those loose ends.
Exactly. So, we've talked about the documents of third parties, but there's one thing that really connects it all.
What's that? The glue that holds it all together?
Communication. Good old-fashioned communication.
Yes, the key ingredient.
Whether you're talking to your attorney, the lender, the contractors, everyone needs to be on the same page.
Absolutely prevents those costly mistakes and delays.
So for our listeners out there, remember, ask questions, be clear about what you need, and don't be afraid to get advice from the experts.
Great advice. And even though the process can seem scary, it's all about reaching your real estate goals, right?
Exactly. So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, understanding these closings gives you the power to make smart choices.
Absolutely. Knowledge and confidence go hand in hand.
Well said. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into real estate loan closings. We hope you learned a lot and maybe even had some fun along the way.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Until next time, keep learning and keep those real estate dreams alive.
And remember, knowledge is power, especially in real estate.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.